The term deluge denotes a series of mid-17th century campaigns in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. In a wider sense it applies to the period between the Khmelnytsky Uprising of 1648 and the Truce of Andrusovo in 1667, thus comprising the Polish theatres of the Russo-Polish and Second Northern Wars. In a stricter sense, the term refers to the Swedish invasion and occupation of the Commonwealth as a theatre of the Second Northern War only, in Poland and Lithuania. This period is called the Swedish Deluge, and the term deluge was popularized by Henryk Sienkiewicz in his novel The Deluge. During the wars the Commonwealth lost approximately one-third of its population as well as its status as a great power. According to Professor Andrzej Rotmund, manager of the Royal Castle in Warsaw, the destruction of Poland in the Deluge was more extensive than the destruction of the country in World War II. As Rotmund claims, Swedish invaders robbed the Commonwealth of its most important riches, and most of the stolen items never returned to Poland. Warsaw, the capital of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, was completely destroyed by the Swedes, and out of a pre-war population of 20,000, only 2,000 remained in the city after the war. According to the 2012 Polish estimates, financial losses of Poland are estimated at 4 billion zlotys. Swedish invaders completely destroyed 188 cities and towns, 81 castles, and 136 churches in Poland. Historical background: in 1648 Bogdan Khmelnytsky led a popular uprising of Zaporozhian Cossacks and Ukrainian peasants discontented with the rule of Polish and Lithuanian magnates. Although the initial phase of the rebellion ended at the Battle of Berestechko, it brought into focus the rivalry between Russia and the Commonwealth for hegemony over Ukraine and over the Eastern Slavic lands in general. Thus, in October 1653 the Russian Zemsky Soba declared war on the Commonwealth, and in June 1654, the forces of Tsar Alexis of Russia invaded the eastern half of Poland-Lithuania, starting the Russo-Polish War of 1654–67. In the summer of 1654, the Russians managed to capture most important cities and strongholds of today's Belarus. Smolensk was captured after a siege on October 3, 1654. The Swedish Empire, which technically already was at war with the Commonwealth, invaded and occupied the remaining half of the country. Swedish invasion. Following the 30 Years' War, the Swedish Empire emerged as one of the strongest nations on the continent. It had a large army but little money to pay its soldiers. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, weakened by wars with the Cossacks and Tsardom of Russia, seemed like easy prey, also because its best soldiers had been massacred in the 1652 Battle of Barty. Furthermore, Swedes remembered claims to the throne by Polish kings Sigismund III Vasa and his sons Vladislav IV Vasa and John II Casimir, who themselves belonged to the House of Vasa. An earlier conflict, the Polish-Swedish War, had ended with the Treaty of Sturmsdorf. The Polish-Lithuanian King John II Casimir lacked support among the Commonwealth nobility due to his sympathies with absolutist Austria and his open contempt for the Sarmatist culture of the nobility. Earlier, in 1643, John Casimir had become a member of the Jesuits and had received the title of cardinal. Nevertheless, in December 1646, he returned to Poland and, in October 1647, resigned his position as cardinal to stand for election to the Polish throne. After the death of his brother Vladislav IV Vasa, he became king in 1648. However, some of the nobility supported Charles Gustav for the Polish-Lithuanian throne. Many members of the Polish nobility, including Deputy Chancellor of the Crown Hieronym Radziejowski and Grand Treasurer of the Crown Boguslaw Leszczyński, regarded John Casimir as a weak king or as a Jesuit king. For personal reasons, they encouraged Charles Gustav to claim the Polish crown. Two Lithuanian noble princes, Janusz Radziwiłł and Boguslaw Radziwiłł, subsequently introduced internal dissension into the Commonwealth's troubles and began negotiations with the Swedish King Charles X. Gustav of Sweden aimed at breaking up the Commonwealth and the Polish-Lithuanian Union. They signed the Treaty of Catania, which envisaged the Radziwiłł princes ruling over two duchies carved out from the lands of the Duchy of Lithuania under Swedish vassalage. 1655. In July 1655, two Swedish armies, operating from Swedish Pomerania and the province of Pomerania, entered Greater Poland, one of the richest and most developed provinces of the Commonwealth, which had for centuries been unaffected by any military conflicts, and whose levée en masse had not been used to fighting. The Greater Poland's nobility camp, located in the valley of the Notek River, near the town of Ushi, looked more like a large party, as the Szlachta gathered that to face the Swedish army was more interested in drinking. To make matters worse, two powerful magnates, the voivode of Poznan Krzysztof Opolinski and the voivode of Kalisz Andrzej Karol Grudzinski, argued with each other whether to fight or to give up to the enemy. Polish troops lacked gunpowder, cannons, and even food, which was stolen at local villages by the hungry soldiers. After an easy Swedish victory at the Battle of Ushi, Krzysztof Opolinski surrendered Greater Poland to Charles Gustav. On July 31, 1655, the army commanded by Arvid Wittenberg captured Poznan, and on August 20, near Konin, the armies of Wittenberg and Charles Gustav joined forces and headed for Warsaw. On September 2, the Poles lost the Battle of Sobota, and on September 4, the Swedes captured Łowicz. 4 days later, the Swedish army entered the Polish capital, becoming the first foreign army in Polish history to capture Warsaw. King Charles Gustav left a garrison in Warsaw under Bengt Gabrielsson Oxenstierna and headed southwards in pursuit of John Casimir. On September 16, the Swedes defeated Polish troops in the Battle of Arnau, and the Polish forces gave up resistance and surrendered to the invaders. The Polish king headed towards Kraków on September 25, and then fled to Silesia. Kraków was left in the hands of Stefan Czarniecki. On October 3, Swedish forces once again defeated the Poles in the Battle of Wojnich, which opened the road to Kraków. The ancient capital of Poland was captured after a siege on October 13, 1655. With the three most populated and best developed Polish provinces in his hands, Charles Gustav decided to head back northwards to Royal Prussia, which was defended by the voivode of Malbork, Jakub Wedger. The Swedes, who were generally superior in training, discipline and equipment, advanced rapidly. Meanwhile, in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, whose eastern part had been occupied by another Swedish army under Magnus Gabriel de Legardi since August 1655, Janusz Radziwiłł and his cousin Boguslaw Radziwiłł signed the Union of Catania, which ended Lithuania's union with Poland. The decision of the Radziwiłłs was the result of the 1654 Russian invasion, as Janusz Radziwiłł accused the Poles of not helping the Lithuanians with the defense of the Grand Duchy. The Russian capture of Vilnius, and the subsequent slaughter of its residents convinced the Lithuanian nobility that Swedish protection was the best solution. The situation of the Commonwealth was desperate, but hope appeared with the Truce of Vilna, in which Poland and the Tsardom of Russia fought formed an anti-Swedish alliance, with Russian forces attacking Sweden in Livonia. Poland finally had time to recoup and gather fresh forces. On October 12, 1655, with permission of King John Casimir, Frederick William, Elector of Brandenburg, signed the Treaty of Rinsk, in which the royal Prussian nobility agreed to allow Brandenburgian garrisons in the province to defend it against the Swedish invasion. In November and December 1655, the Swedish army under Gustav Otto Stenbock captured all the towns of Royal Prussia except for Gdansk, Puck and Malbork. To prevent John Casimir's return to Poland, Swedish units protected the border with Silesia. On November 18, 1655, the Swedes besieged the monastery at Jasna Gora, located in Lesser Poland, near the border. Led by the Grand Prior Augustin Kordecki, the garrison of the symbolic sanctuary fortress of Poland held off its enemies in the siege of Jasna Gora. The defensive Jasna Gora galvanized Polish resistance against the Swedes. The news of the siege spread across the nation, and in several areas guerrilla units were created, outraged at the Swedes' attempt to seize the monastery. On December 7, 1655, the unit of Colonel Gabriel Wojniilowicz defeated the Swedes and the Polish collaborators near Krosno. On December 13, Polish troops under Wojniilowicz recaptured Nowy Sacz, and soon afterwards Sweden lost Biała, Dukla, Biacz, Wieliczka, and Oswiecim. By late 1655, the situation in southern Lesser Poland had deteriorated to such an extent for the invaders that on December 27 they decided to lift the siege of Jasna Gora. On December 16, 1655, in Sokół, Polish crown hetmans urged the nation to fight the Swedish armies. 2 days later, King John Casimir left Głogowec in Silesia, and via Raciborz and Cieszyn returned to Poland, arriving at Lubola on December 27. 2 days later, the Tysoche Confederation was formed in support of the Polish king. John Casimir himself met with hetmans Stanislaw Rewiera-Potocki, Jerzy Sebastian Lubomirski, Stanislaw Lankaronski, and Stefan Czarnicki in Krosno. On December 31, 1655. The meeting was also attended by Primate Andrzej Leszczyński and 8 voivodes. While in Krosno, the Polish king found out about the end of the siege of Jasna Gora, and about the death of Janusz Radziwiłł. On January 12, 1656, John Casimir left Krosno, and after 3 days, arrived at Lankard Castle, which belonged to the Lubomirski family. On February 10, the king came to LWOW, which, together with Gdansk, was one of only 2 major cities of the Commonwealth not seized by any of Poland's enemies. Soon Polish army units began to concentrate in the area of LWOW, including militias from Red Ruthenia, Volhynia and Lublin, as well as forces under Potocki and Prince Lubomirski, together with the garrison of Kamieniec-Podolski fortress. Charles Gustav, after finding out about the return of the Polish king, ordered his armies to concentrate in Łowicz. On February 8, 1656, the Swedes defeated Czarnicki in the Battle of Golab, and continued the march towards LWOW, reaching the Zamość fortress on February 25. On March 1, realizing that without heavy guns it was impossible to capture the mighty stronghold, the Swedish army gave up the siege, and headed towards Belzec. On March 3, Charles Gustav, whose units were harassed by Polish guerrilla forces, decided to retreat. At the same time, guerrilla warfare also broke out in Mazovia and Greater Poland, and Lithuanian units under the Grand Hetman of Lithuania Parelian Sapieha began moving towards Red Ruthenia. On March 11, the Swedish Swedish army arrived at Jaroslavl, fighting its way across the San River. Charles Gustav sent some of his forces to capture Przemysl, but on March 16 they returned to Jaroslavl without success. On March 22, the Swedish army set off northwards along the San and Vistula rivers, back to Warsaw. They were followed by units of Stefan Czarnyski and Aleksander Konispolski, and during the retreat, Polish troops supporting the invaders changed sides, joining the forces of John Casimir. On March 30, the starving, cold and tired Swedish army of 5,000 stopped near Sandomierz, which was already in Polish hands. The Swedes camped among the forests of Sandomierz wilderness near Gorzyce, where they were quickly surrounded by approximately 23,000 Poles and Lithuanians. To help the besieged army, on March 27 Frederick VI left Warsaw with 2,500 reiters and dragoons. Sir John Casimir ordered the mounted units of Khmelnytsky and Lubomirski to face the Margrave. Frederick's army was defeated on April 7 in the Battle of Walka. At Gorzyce, however, second-quality Polish forces remained, and the Swedish king managed to break out, and on April 13, Charles Gustav reached Warsaw. Meanwhile, the Polish king made the LWOW oath, in which he entrusted the Commonwealth to the Blessed Virgin Mary's protection, and declared her the Queen of the Polish Crown. After the Battle of Walka, Czarnyski and Lubomirski decided to head towards Greater Poland and Kujawi to support guerrilla forces active there. By April 9, Polish troops reached Royal Prussia, capturing Bydgoszcz and Nakło. Polish attempt to capture Torun on April 17 was a failure. After a short rest, Stefan Czarnyski considered a raid of Swedish Pomerania, but other Polish leaders opposed this idea. Charles Gustav decided to prevent the Poles from taking control of the northern districts of the country, and departed Warsaw with an army of 10,000. On April 21, the Lithuanians under Sapieha freed Lublin, and on April 23 the Lithuanian army reached Praga, which today is a right-bank district of Warsaw. The forces of Czarnyski and Lubomirski joined other troops near Pila, but on May 7 they were defeated in the Battle of Klecko. Despite the numerical superiority, after the battle, the surviving Polish units regrouped near Gniezno, and in late May they headed for Warsaw to help the Lithuanians in the siege of the Polish capital. Warsaw was being defended by Arvid Wittenberg with 2,000 soldiers, as the main Swedish army was busy besieging Gdansk. Wittenberg capitulated on July 1, 1656. Already in late 1655, Charles Gustav realized that it would be impossible for him to control the Commonwealth. The Swedish king decided to find allies who would help him to divide Poland-Lithuania. On June 29, 1656, he signed the Treaty of Marienburg, in which he offered Frederick William, Elector of Brandenburg, a reward for fighting on his side. Brandenburg Prussia was promised sovereignty in 4 voivodeships: Poznan, Kalisz, Lechika, and Sieradz. On July 28, a reinforced Swedish Brandenburgian army, under Charles Gustav, set out for Warsaw. Even though the Allied army was smaller, it still managed to defeat the Poles and Lithuanians in the Battle of Warsaw, and to recapture Warsaw. This victory, however, achieved little, as the Poles retreated behind the Wieprz, where they regrouped, and were soon ready to continue fighting. Finally, Charles Gustav decided to abandon Warsaw, and retreat to Royal Prussia. To punish Brandenburg Prussia, Commonwealth forces decided to invade the Duchy of Prussia. In early October 1656, an army of 11,000 under Wincenty Korwin-Gosiewski entered Prussia, supported by 2,000 Crimean Tatars. On October 8, Gosiewski's army won the Battle of Prostkin, but after the Tatars decided to return to the Crimea, the Polish-Lithuanian army was defeated in the Battle of Filipau. In November 1656, Greater Poland's troops invaded the Brandenburg province of Neumark, which resulted in withdrawal of Brandenburg forces from most of Greater Poland. Charles Gustav, knowing that he needed the support of the Elector, agreed to sign the Treaty of Labiau, which granted full sovereignty to the Prussian ruler in exchange for his complete military support of Sweden in the ongoing war. The Commonwealth, on the other hand, had already been negotiating with the House of Habsburg. On December 1, 1656, the First Treaty of Vienna was signed, which was followed by a Second Treaty of Vienna, in which Emperor Leopold I promised to aid John Casimir with 12,000 troops against the Swedish Brandenburgian alliance. By late 1656, Swedish troops had been pushed out of most of the Commonwealth. They only held the right bank half of Royal Prussia, northern Mazovia, Lowicz, Kraków, and Tykocin. In 1653, the Transylvanian Hungarian ruler George II Rákóczi signed an alliance with Poland, and the relations between the Commonwealth and Transylvania were friendly. George had even been offered the Polish crown, on condition that he convert to Catholicism. Stunning Swedish successes, however, made Rákóczi change his mind. On May 18, 1656, Charles X Gustav, in a letter sent from Malbork, offered the Hungarian Prince Red Ruthenia, in exchange for military support against the Commonwealth. Meanwhile, Rákóczi had already been negotiating with Bohdan Khmelnytsky, and on September 7, 1656, Transylvania and the Zaporozhian Sich signed a peace treaty, which obliged both sides to help each other in war. On December 8, 1656, the Treaty of Radnit was signed, which divided Poland-Lithuania among Charles X Gustav, Boguslaw Radziwiłł, Elector Frederick William, Bohdan Khmelnytsky, and George II Rákóczi. In late January 1657, the Transylvanian army of 25,000 crossed the Carpathians, heading towards Matejko, where 10,000 Cossack allies awaited them. To face the new invader, the army of Hetman Stanislaw Potocki rushed southwards. At the same time, in the Battle of Chovnice, the Swedes defeated the Poles. On February 26, Stefan Czarniecki and King John Casimir met in Kalisz, where they decided to prevent the Swedish and Transylvanian armies from meeting. After joining the Cossacks, Rákóczi decided not to attack Lwow, but set off towards Kraków, where the situation of the Swedish garrison under Wirtz was desperate. On March 21, Rákóczi captured Tarnow, and on March 28 he reached Kraków. Along the way to the ancient Polish capital, the Transylvanian Cossack army burned and looted towns and villages, murdering thousands. Since his army was too busy looting Lesser Poland, only 5,000 soldiers reached Kraków, which by the Treaty of Radnit was to be ruled by Transylvania. After leaving 2,500 soldiers to help the Swedish garrison of Kraków, Rákóczi's army headed northwards along the Vistula. On April 12, 1657, the Transylvanian Cossack army met with Swedish forces under Charles X Gustav at Przemyśl. The joined forces began to follow the Polish Crown Army under Stanislaw Potocki, and the Lithuanian Army under Paweł Sapieha, to force a decisive battle. On April 29, the Polish and Lithuanian armies joined forces at Loszyce, and in early May 1657, the Poles decided to organize a revenge raid on Transylvania under Hetman Jerzy Sebastian Lubomirski. On May 13, Rákóczi and Charles X Gustav seized the fortress of Brześć-Litewski, and on May 17, after a three-day siege, the Swedes, Cossacks, and Transylvanians captured Warsaw. Soon afterwards, however, the Dano-Swedish War began, and Charles X Gustav left Poland with most of his troops. The remaining Swedish army was commanded by Gustav Otto Stenbock. The Swedish withdrawal made Rákóczi uneasy, as he was well aware of poor quality of his soldiers. On July 7–8, 1656, at Lankit Castle, King John Casimir and his hetmans agreed that Stefan Czarniecki would follow Rákóczi and the Cossacks, while Lubomirski's and Potocki's divisions together with Crimean Tatars would guard the border, preventing the Transylvanian Cossack army from leaving the Commonwealth. On June 20, 1657, Stenbock was ordered by Charles X Gustav to abandon Rákóczi and head with his army to Stettin. To save his skin, the ruler of Transylvania began a quick retreat southwards, towards the Carpathians. On July 11, Stefan Czarniecki's division defeated Rákóczi at Magiro near Lwow, and on July 20, the Transylvanian Cossack army was completely destroyed in the Battle of Czarny Ostro in Podolia. 3 days later, Rákóczi signed a peace treaty with the Commonwealth, in which he promised to break the alliance with Sweden, withdraw his troops from Kraków and Brześć-Litewski, and pay for the damage inflicted by his army. On July 26, remnants of the Transylvanian army were surrounded by the Tatars near Skarlat. Rákóczi himself managed to flee, and the army was temporarily commanded by John Khmelnytsky, who himself was captured by the Tatars. After 6 months of fighting in Poland, Rákóczi's army of 25,000 ceased to exist, with all survivors taken prisoner by the Tatars. On August 30, the Swedish garrison left Kraków, and throughout August and September 1657, all Swedish troops in Poland moved northwards, to Royal Prussia. Altogether, by autumn of that year, only some 8,000 Swedish soldiers remained in Poland. Lithuania. The Swedes still kept some Prussian cities, as Malbork, Elblag, Szedtum, Brodnica, Grudziądz, and Torun. On September 11, an Austrian army of 11,000, allied with Poland, concentrated near Kraków and set off to Plock, where it spent the winter. Polish army commanders and King John Casimir, gathered in Poznan on November 26, decided to delay the attack on Swedish forces in Royal Prussia until spring 1658. On November 6, 1657, Poland and Brandenburg Prussia signed the Treaty of Bromberg. Ducal Prussia, which had previously allied itself with Sweden and attacked Poland, changed sides and guaranteed military support of the Commonwealth, in return for sovereignty. This treaty is regarded as one of the worst mistakes in Polish history. In the spring of 1658, the Polish army, together with its Austrian allies under Raymonda Montecuccoli, began a campaign in Royal Prussia, where several key towns and cities were still in Swedish hands. On July 1, the siege of Torun began. The heavily fortified city was defended by 2,400 soldiers under Batod Hartwig von Bülow. The Polish troops included the divisions of Krzysztof Grodzicki, Jan Sapieha and Stefan Czarniecki. Furthermore, they were provided support by the Brandenburgian Prussian army of Boguslaw Radziwiłł, which after the Treaty of Bromberg changed sides. Altogether, almost 25,000 4,000 soldiers besieged Torun. After a prolonged artillery bombardment, the main attack took place in the night of November 1617, and on December 30 Torun capitulated. Meanwhile, Stefan Czarniecki's division headed to Denmark, Norway, to help the Danes in the Dano-Swedish War. In October 1658, the Polish army of 4,500 reached Hamburg, and in December 1658, with the help of Polish troops, the fortress of Kolding was captured. On July 1, 1658, the Sejm ordered the expulsion of the Polish brethren, who were accused of collaborating with the Swedish invaders. In 1659, the Swedish army still remaining in Poland under Lorenz von der Linde was withdrawn to major Royal Prussian fortresses, Malbork, Glowa Gdanska, Grudziądz, Elblag, and Brodnica. In August 1659, the Polish army captured Glowa and Grudziądz, and soon afterwards, the starving Swedish garrison at Brodnica surrendered. The siege of Malbork was continued, and Polish Brandenburgian troops blocked Elblag. In December 1659, the siege of Elblag began. Meanwhile, in late 1658, the Polish-Russian truce ended when Russian forces under Ivan Andreyevich Korvinsky and Jurij Alexeyevich Dolgorukov again attacked the Polish-Lithuanian units. The reason for the attack was the Treaty of Hadziach, which created the Polish-Lithuanian Ruthenian Commonwealth. Muscovy was opposed to this newly established state, and decided to wage another war. The Russians managed to capture large parts of the Commonwealth, but were later defeated in the Battle of Konotop and the Battle of Polonka. On May 3, 1660, the Treaty of Oliva was signed, which ended the Polish-Swedish War. After the conclusion of the conflict, Poland-Lithuania initiated a large offensive against the Russians, who were beaten in the Battle of Chudnov. In 1661, Vilna was recaptured, and in 1663–64, Polish forces invaded left bank Ukraine. The war with Russia ended with the Truce of Andrusovo.